Yeah, it's a complicated thing about the whole censorship issue. I mean, I think in the end it comes down to the individual. It's perhaps not a state thing to be decided, because even with not just kids, adults. I mean, to talk to a whole country and say you're not clever enough to see this seems a bit odd. It seems, and it generally seems to be aimed at, I suspect is generally aimed at a sort of working class demographic. You're not clever enough to get this. You won't understand. We're middle class. We've been to university, and we understand this.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another PlungeCast. This one comes with a bit of a warning. We're going to be talking with horror researcher and novelist, literature novelist, book writer, Simon. We'll talk about him a bit more, but I just want to give you guys a bit of a warning. We don't usually do sort of more adult-oriented topics, and with horror movies and etc. that we're going to be talking about, there'll be some queasy stuff we're going to be talking about. But we don't want to be not talking about that because, we don't want to dumb that down or make it PG. We just want to talk about what we're going to talk about. Just be warned, if that's not your thing, that's fine. And we'll try to warn you ahead of time if we're going to talk about some movie that's going to be a bit out there. But it's horror. So, you already know it's going to be R18 anyway. So thank you for joining us. And with me today as co-host is Shane Evans, my good mate. An artist and a huge horror fan, more so than myself. Also, we just want to promote The Devil Took Her, Tales of Horror by Mike Batur, one of our other mates. And we just want to say cheers to, I got to find time to read it. And I love the fact that it's short stories because my brain doesn't like reading long things these days, whereas I used to do it in my pre-30s all day long. So thank you. And Simon, take it away. Tell us about yourself and who you are, where you're from, and a bit of your background. And then we'll get into it. Cheers, mate.
Quick detour. So I did just, because we Michael's book, and we were just talking just before about feeling sick during horror. If you haven't read it, the first story in this one, that did make me feel a bit sick, and that's how good it is. So,
wow.
Yes. My name's Simon Kingsley-Holmes, and I am from the UK originally. Obviously, I'm not a native New Zealander, although I've been over here almost 20 years. But I just don't like blending in, so I stuck with an irritating nasal English twang that I have. Been a film obsessive ever since I saw The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly when I was 15. Although, like every other kid, I wore out VHS tapes, watching things over and over again, even before that. Film school when I was in my late teens. The film school, the one in Wellington, that I think it's now part of Vic Uni or something like that. But yeah, where they actually shot with film, and we work with industry professionals. And if you're me, you turn into an arrogant twat and blow your chances. And so my film career didn't quite work out. And then do odds and jobs and fell into doing stand-up. But in that meantime, also did worked as a weekly critic for Radio 1 in Dunedin, which was great. And I don't know why the hell I gave it up, because I'm an idiot again. Now I'm just a couple of years ago started embarking on this research project to write, as it turns out, the first book about New Zealand horror movies. So
it's kind of a weird theme to pick on, isn't it? Like you've probably watched, like, was it The Good, the Bad, the Ugly, right? That's the Western. So you go from that and onto horror. It's a huge wide gap. And but why? What made you think, okay, I'm going to write a book about horror?
I was writing through when I was a weekly critic, and for Radio 1, I was writing a blog, quite about a blog, so like as well written as any blog ever is. But I just loved doing that. But after 5 years or more of doing it, I thought, well, this isn't really getting much traffic. I love doing it, but it's not getting much traffic. So I thought, well, I've got to do something with a bit of substance. And the Blu-ray for Death Warmed Up came out, and that sort of opened up that whole world of New Zealand horror. Because obviously I'd seen Peter Jackson's films and you know, like Black Sheep and What We Do in the Shadows and whatnot, but I didn't know there was a whole raft of other Kiwi horrors. So
yeah,
as soon as I yes,
yeah.
Is that
Bad Taste? The original Bad Taste VHS.
Oh, it's a VHS. Brilliant.
Yep.
Yeah, because you can't find.
That's his pencil case. So it goes everywhere.
Yeah,
Oh.
Yeah. So I mean, we're talking about like watching something over and over and over again. Like one of my favorite movies is Beetlejuice, right? So it's kind of like in the PG, you know, middle ground sort of but like way before all that, I remember a movie that I watched that really sort of kind of, I don't know, it must have been my first horror movie, which is Idle Hands. Have you heard of that? Michael Caine?
Yes, yeah, I haven't seen it, but yeah. It's
about a cartoonist,
right?
An illustrator,
okay.
right?
Yep.
Who loses his hand in a car accident, and the hand goes away.
I've not seen that one.
Yeah,
that's
it's like, and
right?
I was a 7, maybe 11-year-old kid, not 10-year-old kid, at middle of the night, Sunday horrors maybe. Dad's away somewhere with his mates. Mum's sitting there, and we're watching movies together, and I'm watching like this between my eyes, between my fingers. Mum's not saying this isn't for you, son, you know, or something, because we're used to watching like, you know, crazy Bollywood movies, and so I'm sitting there, you know, holding on to Mum in her lap and watching this thing, and that's the first horror movie I ever watched. The next one would have been Alien.
Oh wow,
Alien?
Alien.
Yeah, so Alien, and so Idle Hands, Aliens, 2 different types of movies.
Yeah,
so nothing really scares me anymore, right? But there's moments that we saw recently in Terrorizer that, you know, Terrifier. Yes, I keep thinking it's Terrorizer, but Terrifier, I had to close my eyes. Like, have you had moments like that where you've had to close your eyes, where, like, even when you're researching these Kiwi movies, and I want to get more into that, but were there moments in some of these movies where you thought, I've got to close my eyes because it's not going to be good for my health mentally? Because there's a lot of things, right? Because people always go, when what you take in, it goes into your soul, whatever, and it kind of, you know. But as adults, we can, you know, differentiate what's real and what's not real, and plug it up.
Yeah.
So what was it like? What movies affected you that way, where you had to close your eyes? Sorry.
Well, it's I would say, do you mean just Kiwi horrors or just horrors in general?
Horrors in general.
Okay, well, still the Texas Chain Saw Massacre, the original one, which is my favourite. I love it, and the reason I love it is because I barely ever watch it because it terrifies me. And I think, I always can't. Well, it's the explicit thing, and not necessarily gore, but scares, the illicit and explicit thrill of that. So you kind of want to look and can't look at the same time, and that's very much what I love about the original Texas Chain Saw Massacre. I mean, if anything, if it's good enough, you know, the best horrors, it doesn't have to be especially, you know, intellectually edifying, but if it works, if it's terrifying, if the craft is done well enough. I mean, I watched I thought I was, you know, I remember the first Mario Bava film I watched, Black Sunday, and I didn't know much about Mario Bava at that point, and I just thought, 1960 Italian cheapy horror, this will be a bit of camp fun, and I got halfway through it and I had to turn the lights on because it was so creepy. I did not sleep well that night. Looking away, I think Don't Breathe was one that made me look away. Anything set in the woods.
That's the one that people like. Those 2 people who break in.
Yeah, and the old
lead actor, that old guy, he's brilliant. I've seen him recently in another movie. He's really good.
There's loads of stuff. It's Stephen Lang. That's his name.
Yeah, Stephen Lang. That's right.
Yeah. In terms of New Zealand,
he's an Avatar. Sorry, yes, that's right.
Right.
He does a lot of soldier type strong man characters, macho man characters. But like, it was really strange to see him in a role where he's supposed to be blind and stuff. And that was a good movie. That was really well done.
That movie annoyed the hell out of me.
Was it?
Yeah, because I was like, I was always saying, turn the radio on, turn the radio on. What do they do at the end? They make the noises.
Confuses them. Look, horror's like that, isn't it? Like you're there as an audience going,
Yeah.
do
Listen
this,
to me.
do this. You stupid writer, how could you write that way?
I think.
But the whole thing is, I mean,
I think the best ones are the ones that still work on you, even though you still work in you that sort of like fear way, even though you know there's an easy get out, even though you know they shouldn't have walked in that house, you know they should have doing all the things you go, I would never do that, but you still think, oh God, what's going to happen? Are they going to get out? Is everything going to be all right? Even though you know it's not. Yeah. It's also
one of those weird things because you watch a movie and you yell at them like, just do this, just do that.
It's audience participation.
But I mean, if a 6'7" guy with a machete and a mask came towards me, I don't know what the fuck I'd do.
yeah.
Never had that in real life.
Oh, dude. Okay. Real life, right? Situation. Nearly got murdered one night. All right. So yeah. So you're right about that. So like, I wake up right after being hit on the back of the head, knocked unconscious, with a guy on top of me, about probably just a bit bigger than Shane, right? And I wake up and I realize what's going on. Boom. I grab this guy's hand. That's all I'm doing. Everything in my head is don't let him go. The moment you let him go, the fist comes flying at your head because I'm lying on the back on the footpath, and that's all in my head. So yeah, you just all you're thinking is like, save. What is my one thing I can do to save myself from dying here? It was crazy. So I mean, I think, but the other thing is like audience participation. I think the part where you go, you're going, hey, that way. Yeah. You don't do that in normal movies.
No.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, you know the who's going to die next, and you don't think, please don't go that way. No. And you're screaming. It's like when you go to a good comedy show, right?
Yeah.
And you're laughing with the every time the comedy gives you comedian drops the line, what do you call that? Punchline, right? And you just all crack up. So it's kind of like that. And I think sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. I think
in horror, sometimes you know exactly what's coming. Like some comedians, you know exactly what's coming. You know they're about to say something very inappropriate, and you still laugh your ass off. Like, it's the same with some horrors. I mean, that's why Halloween and that just keeps going. It's not exactly getting better.
It's probably getting worse.
But people, they have that expectation. They want to see them. They want to stab.
Halloween 2 is my favorite. Like the mask. Do you remember that? Like in Halloween 2, there's masks, and the masks go out for all the people. All the kids wear them.
Halloween 3.
Oh, is it Halloween 3? It was like the best Halloween of all, as far as I'm concerned.
My eyes in it. They all threw a wobble.
Or Terror Train, where they.
It shouldn't have been called Halloween. I mean, I guess no, it would have been called Halloween because it was Halloween mask.
On Halloween.
Have you seen that Halloween 3?
Sorry, Halloween 3. What, the Season of the Witch?
Yeah.
Do you know? I haven't, because rather like I haven't watched The Bourne Legacy. No, Michael Myers in it. So but I should do actually, because some people have said it's quite good. So
it's a standalone. As a standalone, it's brilliant. That's all I remember about Michael Myers. I remember like I mean, from Halloween, all I remember is like the bath scene. There's a bathroom scene that might be from like in the psychiatric thing, and he's running around with the thing. She's something like that. There's two things I remember, that and the from that whole series.
Yeah.
Now, I was gonna ask, like, so best horror. First best horror, worst horror, and best New Zealand horror film. Before we go into the New Zealand horror films.
Oh, all right. Sorry.
Best horror.
Yeah, best. Okay, best horror. Well,
global, everything.
The original Texas Chain Saw Massacre. I know it's maybe not the most interesting answer, but that is the one that you know, that scared me before I even saw it, because I can remember seeing when it got released uncut in the UK in the late 90s, and there was a poster up in this plaza we used to go, and it was of the Texas Chain Saw Massacre, and it was one of the final images of the sort of sun setting or sun rising behind Leatherface. He's got the chainsaw above the head, and you can't quite see his face, but you know something's not right, and that poster used to creep the hell out of me. And it was back when all the VHSs still had the creepy box art on them, so that worked on me. So worst horror, oh, that's a difficult one. I don't know. I mean, there's Freeway Killer, that's pretty bad. Microwave Massacre, that's a bloody horrible, grotty movie.
So it's like a C or D level.
Yeah. Actually, do you know what? And this is I know it's controversial among some people, but I finally watched the uncut version of Cannibal Holocaust last year, and I hated it. I hated it so much, and I get that some people, I certainly don't. But it was interesting, because the more I hated it, but I talk to people who like it and go with it, and it doesn't. And I think, okay, that's interesting. That's and the more I hate it, the less I think it should be banned over here. I don't know why, but
it's dumb. It is. I mean, I've seen it, and it's
the animal cruelty.
Yeah. That's what made it. The turtle thing made it work.
I just don't want to watch movies like that because of that, and I don't want to watch. I've seen I Spit on Your Grave.
Yeah,
and I thought it was well made for when it came out.
Yeah,
but because it's kind of glorifying rape as a revenge.
That doesn't. I'm usually the guy who goes 1 second of that, and the rest movie is about killing the people who do it.
Yeah, but that first Spit on Your Grave, they make you feel sorry for some of the guys that raped her. So it's a messed up film.
Yeah, but then they do a remake.
The remake doesn't count.
No.
The original I Spit on Your Grave is kind of confused as to what its message really is, and unfortunately, I think they set out to make a serious movie and perhaps didn't have the wherewithal to tackle that subject. It's more problematic than Last House on the Left, I think, which is saying something.
Now, the new one, are you talking about?
Both the originals.
I saw the new one. I didn't do the old one.
Yeah.
Now, back to the Holocaust, Cannibal Holocaust. There's a new movie that recently came out about eco-terrorists.
Okay. Which one's that?
Ali Roth, Green Inferno?
Yeah, the Green Inferno. Basically, it's like a copy of that movie.
It's a big reference. Yeah.
I was like, what?
Well, that was one that inspired that film. So
okay, so that's fine then. I mean, now I understand why it was almost like Cannibal Holocaust. The Green Inferno.
I haven't watched that one. I haven't really bothered with Eli Roth's stuff. I don't know. He just seems like a bit of a knob. But
the ending was stupid, right? Spoiler for people who haven't seen it, right? Just 2 minutes. Just don't like. So the fact is, she gets away. Now she can turn the tables and, get these people removed, because they just eat people. That's all they do, right? Torture and eat people. This cannibal thing. So they could actually bring them, to reality, whatever, modernize them, whatever. But she goes, nah. After all her friends are dead, all her best friends are dead, she's okay. Why? Because she wants that area to be protected. So she's going to allow people to die all the time because she wants. And that itself, it just seems like land over people doesn't go for me.
That didn't work.
Didn't it?
No, they're invading the area.
That is true. Yeah. It was just. But there was protective. You could do some sort of protective, but there was something that I don't know.
Should we skip that and get to the best Kiwi horror?
Sure. Best Kiwi.
I think the end of that movie.
Kiwi horror.
I think the ending of that movie may be enthralled to Eli Roth's opinions of people who want to protect the rainforest. So, perhaps doesn't hold perhaps doesn't hold water on an ethical level, but I mean, it's fine. I haven't seen that movie. I'm not bothered that you spoiled the ending because I'm not going to watch it.
Yeah, it's like movies coming out all the time, and only you can like decide what to.
Yeah. Best Kiwi horror is difficult because because the two I like best are quite different, so it's hard to sort of say which one I prefer more. But I would say it's a toss up between Mr. Wrong and Brain Dead. And they're
Brain Dead.
Yeah, two opposite ends of the horror spectrum, really. I'd say Mr. Wrong it's almost not a horror film, really. It's
Brain Dead.
All right, Brain Dead over here.
And that was available at some stage. What is it with Peter Jackson's early work? Why can you not get it on Blu-rays?
Oh, this one. Do you like this one?
I like that one. Yeah.
Right.
Heavy one, metal one.
No, yeah, that's the heavy metal one.
No, the other heavy metal. Candy.
That's not a Kiwi.
Sweet. Yeah. But like, yeah. So, Brain Dead and Mr. Wrong. Now, who did Mr. Wrong? That's one I don't think I've seen.
It's 1985 horror by Gayleen Preston, who's not known as a horror film. She did she did Home by Christmas. She did My Year with Adam. Sorry, I was trying to Ruby and Rata. That was it. That was a 1990. Complete block
Preston,
on
Ruby and Rata.
Yeah.
So Home by Christmas, is that the one that's almost a documentary?
Yes, it's docudrama. So that's got Martin Henderson in as well, and that's
that's pretty good.
So I don't think I've actually seen Mr. Wrong.
No.
That sounds pretty interesting.
It's good. It's about a young woman. She buys a second-hand car, and it turns out the second-hand car is haunted by the ghost of another woman. And it's based on a book. And it's a ghost story. I think the thing that sets it apart is that it's got one of the best Kiwi characters I think that's ever been written into a Kiwi movie. The main character of Meg, played by Heather Bolton. She's just a proper normal Kiwi woman that you would meet, and she does everything in the way she reacts to all of this in the way that a believable person would, and they managed to write it in such a way that she's trapped into this situation. She can't just you're not sitting there screaming at her to give the thing away, because you know that she can't. And it's I suppose it's more in line with, as a horror film, it's more in line with things like, I guess, Hereditary and things like that. Not that it's in terms of it's more psychological than gore. Yeah, and it's moving away. It's not really using horror tropes. It's definitely made by someone who's not the biggest fan of horror, but she's done an excellent horror film. I would say the thing I would say, having spoken to Dame Gayleen Preston, as I should say, is that she's fantastic. I think she's a very impressive lady. Well, I'm slightly terrified of her at the same time, but she freely admits she's not the biggest fan of horror, but she seems to have a respect for the genre, and she's not above genre stuff. I remember her saying, you wanted to have some scares, some laughs, and she wants to do something that is about because she was inspired to do it because of the sort of casual way that the media was reporting and dealing with missing young women who've been murdered by random strangers and stuff. And so there's a very angry sort of political and feminist subtext in there, and one that would seem almost to be a reaction against horror films, certainly at the time of the slasher boom. But at the same time, she's not. The film isn't above horror, so I like that about it. Whereas I do feel sometimes that someone makes a horror film, filmmakers can make horror films with agendas, and they're not interested in the genre, and consequently they make films that get praised but aren't that good as horror films, I think.
But like Inferno, Green Inferno.
Yeah,
he does love horror, but
he's got an agenda.
Yeah, I mean, horror and comedy are one of those categories that it's like you can spend not much money and get your profit, get your money back. So it's very popular for filmmakers.
Yeah.
Which means it's quite easy to make an average comedy or an average horror.
Yeah.
But to make a good one is, it's like, goes from quite easy to amazingly hard to make anything that stands out and lasts more than a couple of years.
Yeah, yeah. And because I think
there's a lot of great horror movies that come out, and 2 years later, you don't remember them.
Yeah. I haven't seen this, but I've seen the first one a few times.
It's average.
You know, and I remember Evil Dead Forever from high school.
Yeah.
And 15 years old, 16 years old.
If you're asking my favorite horror movies, that's Evil Dead.
Yeah.
I know I rate that above Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's fine.
Because I was annoyed because there wasn't much massacring in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's like, where's the blood? This is very psychological, and I was expecting something much more violent for a movie that was banned.
So it needs to be. You're probably expecting Terrorizer instead of Massacre. So if you switch it around,
with all the hype, because I didn't watch it when it came out.
Yeah.
I mean, I watched it years later when I got it on DVD. A lot of hype, banned, blah blah blah, sick movie. And I'm like, this isn't a sick movie. It's actually well made, and it's all in your head. There's not much visual gore.
Like when we watch movies years later, like even decades later, and that those people at that time had never seen anything like it, and that's in that setting, even like with Cannibal Holocaust, right? In that setting where you don't have to see anything like that happen, they freak out because and make a big deal. Now, like everybody's freaking out over Terrifier. Like it's the grossest movie ever. People puking up, people feeling sick, passing out. That's our kind of, I guess, sort of our Texas Massacre.
It's Evil Dead, actually.
I think in the case of things like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I mean, the reason why that got banned back in the day, well, that's all the video nasties thing, and that's because you had people who weren't horror fans, didn't watch them, and it got banned. They all got banned after what was it, Mary Whitehouse, the Christian campaigner, got a clip of edited highlights and showed to a group of conservative MPs in Westminster at 9 o'clock in the morning when they were having their breakfast, and they went, "This is awful. It's corrupting. We know better. Ban it all," sort of thing.
Similar stuff happened in the 80s with Ronald Reagan being in charge. And they let all the conservatives ban books, and they brought in the labels for rap albums.
And now it's the left doing the same thing now.
But I've recently read a book which you might know, Paperbacks from Hell. Have you read that one?
No.
Okay, well, it talks about the Ronald administration and how they banned everything.
Yeah, hang on, I'm going to write that down.
Yeah, Paperbacks from Hell. It's great. It's about 70s and 80s paperbacks mostly. I got it from Mike, the book.
Oh, okay.
But they talk about how the 80s, because they were trying to ban everything and trying to legislate it and trying to put ratings and systems on it, it actually backfired. They said some of the nastiest and sickest films came out straight after they're told you can't do it.
It's always the case, isn't it?
It's as soon as you tell them they can't do it. It's the same with banned movies like, what was it, the famous story that Life of Brian got banned in Sweden, so it did massive business in Norway, because Swedish people were getting bussed across the border to go and watch this movie that was so appalling. Often backfires, doesn't it?
With, what's with the top hat, the black top hat and the thing?
Is it a horror or is it?
It's kind of like, it's a dystopian horror kind of thing where they, he's got black eyeshadows and stuff. Terrence, is it Terrence, the guy from?
I think it's Clockwork Orange, eh?
That's it. So that got banned one time in one country. Yeah, and so all these people were trying to like sneak it in, and they'd have like underground watching of it. Yeah, and then years later it became normal. Then it was fine. But all those years that people were like, oh, we got to watch this. We got to watch this. Franco's. Where did Franco run?
Spain.
Spain.
Oh,
It was in
okay,
Spain. So under the Franco regime, they were trying to get Clockwork Orange in. And I saw the documentary and I was like, really? Over a movie? They went this hard out. You know, people were buying tickets to be able to, students be able to show it.
It's happened here. I've talked to a guy in Gisborne, a guy called James, who was into the video nasties in the 80s and 90s, and he got arrested back in '93 here in this country for getting a video of Cannibal Holocaust, an uncut video of that. And they said, because they said, they said to him, "We know what you're doing, stop it." And he got one. And in the time that he got the letter from the authorities saying stop it, he'd already put in a subscription to get a copy of Cannibal Holocaust from Australia, so it was on its way, and then his house got raided by the old Bill. So it all happened
30 years ago.
Yeah,
29 years. Yeah, 93, 29 years ago.
Yeah. So
we try to we think we've like gone past that sort of thing where where we go, well, it's a film or it's a game, because like we put ratings on it, right? Like we put ratings like M, 16. I'm sure there's an 18 around here somewhere. Yeah, there's an 18. Because we know what age group it is for. But I don't understand why people suddenly decide, well, these might get in the hand of kids. Well, they only get in the hand of kids if adults are not making sure it doesn't get in the hand of kids, and adults are not doing their duty as adults.
Yeah, the best thing you can tell kids is that it's really boring and dull, and then they won't be interested.
You don't want to.
If you tell us for the slick shit that they can't handle, I want to see that. So
it's like music. This has got a lot of terrible things in it. I want to buy it now. That's your reaction.
Just tell them that won the Academy Award. They won't watch it.
Yeah. My parents were quite lucky because I was quite boringly obedient as a child, so they were quite strict on what I could and couldn't watch, and so I just wouldn't watch it, And then it played on my mind, of course, and so I was terrified of these movies. Except bizarrely, whenever they would let me watch like an 18-rated film, it would always end up being one of the goriest films with the most amount of nudity. It's so bizarre. It's so like Monty Python's Meaning of Life. That's got loads of. That live organ transplant sketch is so violent, and it's gross. And they went, "Yeah, fine, that should be all right," So, or The Wicker Man, which has got so much nudity and sexuality that perhaps I shouldn't have watched, but. Oh Christ! What's that? Sorry, I've better turn me internet off on my phone. Somebody just pinged. I do apologise. It's that illicitness or again explicitness. I mean, kids always want to see that, So it's sort of it's a complicated thing about the whole censorship issue. I mean, I think in the end it comes down to the individual. It's perhaps not a state thing to be decided, because even with not just kids, adults. I mean, to talk to a whole country and say you're not clever enough to see this seems a bit odd. It seems, and it generally seems to be aimed at, I suspect is generally aimed at a sort of working class demographic. You're not clever enough to get this. You won't understand. We're middle class. We've been to university, and we understand this. I don't think quite works.
You don't know how art works. We know how art works. It will infect your brain this way, and
I do think some movies should be put on the list. Because I recently watched the 180 Days of Solemn.
Salo. I haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, I watched that because I read all these reviews and they all said it was demented and sick. I'm like, okay. And then someone said, but it's a metaphor for the way that the fascists were taking over Italy or something.
Yeah, Italy.
So I thought, okay, it's actually an art film. So I watched it, and I didn't get the metaphor. All I saw was people defecating and raping people. So I was like, I'm sorry, but I actually agree with this.
There was no reason for that movie at all. There was no reason.
There's a message in it. It wasn't obvious enough.
Yeah, you're right. There are some movies that shouldn't be made. Like, you got to look and go, why? Was it based on a book, though?
Yeah, Marquis de Sade. Yeah. Oh, not a book actually. I believe it was like a manuscript that was found in the walls of his cell, the Marquis de Sade's cell that he had written before they stormed the Bastille or something. But yeah, I mean, I like Pasolini's work, but I've not had the bravery to see Salo yet. I've heard so many things, but I think that's for when
it lives up to its reputation.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Movie for no reason. Well, I was about 5 years ago.
I was trying to see the deeper meaning in it, and I just could not get past all the underage rape and other stuff. So it's like, no.
Yeah. Mind you, that said, I mean, that's an interesting thing I was thinking about this morning, because I watched this morning I was watching a film from 1946 by Renoir called Day in the Country, and it's just a film about a bunch of people where they go for a nice day in the country, but there is a scene in it which has not dated well, which is in which a young man, obviously it's made in 1946, it's not explicit, but a young man forces himself upon a young lady, and then it's sort of like treated like it's all fine, and it's a PG rated film. You think, well, I don't think that should be banned, but I do think that should have a higher rating, even though it's nothing explicit. It's the content. It perhaps should be
there is a thing where, because it was made a long time ago, then we can lower the rating. I've done a few movies do that.
Or because it's art, it's fine.
Mad Max was banned in Australia.
Yeah.
It's now an R16.
Yeah.
And when I was young, it was an R18.
Yeah.
And it's
a lot of normal, like back in the 80s, a lot of normal Bollywood movies, right? They would come out in theaters and stuff that would get to you on video. I would class them at least R16 or R18, because a lot of them had rape scenes, and usually rape was used as because a lot of Bollywood movies are about revenge.
About motivator.
It's like a motivation to, poor, like a class, because they have the class system. So the caste system. So it's like the poor against the rich landlords and so forth, because the rich landlords can do what they want whenever they want, or landowners. And so that sort of has kind of becomes the plot Kickstarter. And I kind of find like myself doing a couple of those, and sometimes I have to hold myself back. It's like I remember writing The Circle as a student feature, right? So we got it made, and then when I never showed it, right? So the idea is the guys are talking about what he did, and nobody knows if he did it or that he didn't do it, right? It's just a portion of the whole confessional that they do. And when it came to doing the comic book for it, I just used text.
Yeah.
Right? Because I wanted to fill a thing. I wanted to create tension just by using speech bubbles, nothing else. And to show that he did do it, or kind of he's still saying he didn't do it, but do we still know if he did it, or this is his thinking that he was going to do it? And so there is that. And I think a lot of times there is no reason. It's like Dharma. Why do we keep having movies made about Dharma? Serial killers over and over again. It's like I mean, there's enough fantasy horror. Why do we need real horror? But that's
I suppose sometimes, again, to me, it always comes down to: is it good? Has it got something new to say? Has it got something? So, I think, there is a lot of exploitative stuff out there about real horror. That's all this endless sort of films about the serial killers, whatever. But then you'll get something like Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer or Wolf Creek or something, and you get some really magnificent films that are dealing with it in a head on. And so I don't know.
I don't think I saw Henry.
I think the ratings should be more based on the not necessarily the visual gore, but it should be the way that it's portrayed. Because if you've got a movie that treats rape as if it's not important, I think that's pretty disgusting.
Yeah.
But if you've got one where it happens, but they deal with it in an honest way, and it's not sort of used to sell tickets. So that to me is fine. Like I don't think Evil Dead should be an R18, because it does have a tree thing, and it does have a lot of violence, but it's not a realistic portrayal. No one's going to watch that and go, that's true.
Yeah. Or they'll be excited by it. That's the thing.
They're not going to be excited by it either, because every person I've seen that scene has just gone, oh shit.
Yeah. But that's the other thing. So, like, if we're talking about topics, like kind of taboo topics, right? That we can't have in certain movies and stuff, or in movies in general, but in horror, you can get away with a lot in horror because we know it's fantasy, we know it's. But the other thing is it glorifying a subject? Is what really gets me.
Yeah, I think Hostel is more messed up than half the other messed up films, because all my friends that saw Hostel, they would only talk about the gory scenes in it. They wouldn't talk about the story or the characters. They were like getting off on how violent it was, and I'm like, that's pretty messed up. I mean, did it have a good story? Were the characters good? Did it end well?
My takeaway was like it's possible, right? It's like
it's possible, but my friends they were excited by the violence. So I'm like, you guys are messed up. I watch horror movies all day, and I don't get excited by that.
Yeah.
Right, I suppose it depends on. For me, those torture porn movies, I never really got into those ones. The first Saw movie is good, but I never went towards like Human Centipede and all that sort of stuff. It just does, But that said, I'm not above enjoying, like we just mentioned, Brain Dead earlier. I mean, my God, it's that fun violence, and a lot of the slash movies. And having got into slash movies in a big way a couple of years ago, I think the funny thing for me is the giallo films, the 70s movies from Italy that tend to be critically more well respected. A lot of them I tend to find quite unpleasant, and particularly because the way women are treated in those films, it's like it's quite nasty. Even the heroes are slapping women around and stuff. And the slasher movies from the 80s, like the Friday the 13th movies, I'm not for 1 second going to go, I think you'll find they're actually feminist movies. They're not. There is a sweetness and a kind of more innocence to them than the sort of leery nastiness to a lot of things from the Italian stuff. I mean, not all the Italian stuff, Something like Blood and Black Lace is fun, and the Argento ones are fun, but then you get stuff like
Argento is pretty cool.
Yeah. Argento is more artistic. A bit more thought put into the shots and stuff. It's not all just shock and all.
So here's let's talk about movies we do not want to see, right? Right. We never ever want to bring to ourselves. Serbian movie. I will never
watch it.
Never. I don't care, whatever. Never.
No.
Second Centipede, never. No. Or anything like that. There's like a movie that you'll never watch. That's the one for me. It's like, why?
I suppose to an extent, again, having seen Cannibal Holocaust, and I was talking with a couple of guys after who'd seen it and liked it and said, I think, and I thought, well, these are not mentally disturbed men that I know. They're just horror fans, whatever. And I thought, okay, well, fine, horses for courses, I loathe it. I absolutely despise that film. But it was a strange instance of me thinking, all right, fine. If you do like it, fine. But I think, and it kind of, I think it clarified a lot of things in my mind. I thought, well, as I say, Cannibal Holocaust is banned over here. And I thought, the fact that I loathed it so much, I think means it probably shouldn't be, because I don't see myself as particularly special. So I don't think I'm going to be on my own in thinking, I can see that Cannibal Holocaust is immoral and disgusting and it will be corrupting, and no one else will. I think most people if they watch Cannibal Holocaust, they go, that's horrible and hypocritical and disgusting. So I don't see why. So, there are films, I think that comes, your initial point is what it comes down to is there are just things I know what I'll tolerate and I know what I won't. I know what I'm not going to watch. I've heard enough about a Serbian film, and I hear it's an allegory for the political situation in Serbia. I don't really want to watch it though. It's very clever.
Like Flower, right? Allegory. Okay, fine. No.
I watched the artistic version of the Serbian film, and that was enough.
It's very short.
I mean, there was like, how do you, as a writer myself, I'll go, these are topics I won't touch, and these are topics I won't touch. Right?
Yeah.
And when I'm doing something there's a reason why there's a reason why I'm going where I'm going with the story.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what story I'm writing.
Hmm.
And I've got to say, well, until I find it's going to be enjoyable, and enjoyable in a sense where it's not going to make somebody interested in doing it, but it's actually a fantasy. It's enjoyment for the sake. Oh, it's cool, entertainment and stuff. But when am I okay with doing these stories? And I'll be like, no, that's not what I want. I'll never write that story. Serbian, never. No, I would never write any. I mean, at the moment, I'm writing a story about. It's a kind of like somebody else revenge, right? Like revenge plots is really cool and comes easy to me because I've grown up watching revenge-based films. And like we said, it's a good instigator to getting driving story.
It's a human response. I mean, everyone probably thinks they want to get revenge.
Yeah.
You just don't go out like Death Wish and mow down half a neighborhood.
Yeah, better than people get out.
Death Wish being a horror movie.
Yeah. Better than people get those emotions out through making, writing, and watching movies rather than actually going and doing the thing. Yeah.
But that is that's why we have these horror movies, because sometimes it's just for entertainment value, but also it's like just to see art and be entertained. But then that's what I don't understand. It's like, why would somebody make movies that feels like that they're glorifying and doing just for the sake of exploitative, right? That sort of, it's just to exploit. And then you got to have these audiences sitting there going, I feel exploited. I should not have been sitting here being exploited this way. Yeah. And I think there's that's a discussion. I think, when you go to say, well, video nasties, that would fall under the video nasties for real.
Yeah. I think sometimes with, we're all creators to one extent or another. And I think sometimes with regards to the people who make the extreme or something, particularly as a stand-up, when I watch like a lot of these sort of bad boy edgelords who come into stand-up and they've just got nastiness and vitriol. So I think sometimes it's a phase you're going through in life. It's missing, it's not being guided. I mean, oftentimes I wish that I would just go over to these young guys and say, do you know what? It's okay to say you just want your mum. All right. You don't need to make these horrible comments about this group or that group. You want to shock me, write a joke. That would really shock me, rather than just coming in here and ruining everybody's good times with some, horrible vitriol. And I think that can happen with filmmaking as well. I mean, someone, usually blokes, I mean, let's be honest with ourselves. You just end up in a bad place in your life, and you end up expunging the things, and later down the line you think, oh, I wish I hadn't done that. Apparently Sam Raimi is
that moment of misspent youth when you're like going, oh, I should have stopped, I should have carried on with that, and you're saying, like, I should have stayed with that job and not done that, and you kind of like
I've certainly done it. I've certainly
either go left or right
on stage, shouldn't have done it. And apparently Sam Raimi is quite embarrassed about the tree scene in Evil Dead. I might have heard that somewhere. I can't remember, but
I've heard that recently too. So.
It's like there's things that don't age well, and that's when that's why I'm saying, like, when I'm writing, I'm going, what do I put in? What do I don't put in? Right? It might seem fine in my head to myself, but when it comes onto like with me, it's comic books. Once the artist draws it, then it's there in reality, right? Until I still have control over it until it gets printed, and at that point I can change it. And I've done it quite often. I've just gone around and going, okay, no, hold on, mate, hold on, pull back a bit, And I think it's cool, like to be able to do that as a creative person. But I think sometimes you kind of have to go to somebody and go, hey, what do you think? Because, and I think in that movie, I don't think he went to anybody and said, what do you think?
I think it's all context. I mean, I love RoboCop, and RoboCop is actually a very nasty little film. But when you watch it, it's not. it's a weird one because it feels like it's glorifying it, and yet it's not, because you can tell there's a very dark sense of humor behind it, and there's a lot of statements about the world at the time. There's a lot of things in the background, like the TV programs and the
during Reagan.
He's really making fun of the way the world was turning in his head.
Why they for $1?
Still rings true today, doesn't it? RoboCop. Yeah. You go, oh, that's so much more true now. Yeah. Agreed.
Frank Miller, isn't it? Frank Miller comic book.
Frank Miller actually wrote the screenplay.
Yeah. So comic book and then screenplay.
Yeah. It's it's fascinating.
Now, what was your one?
For what?
Never,
probably Serbian. Yeah. Something like that. I haven't seen Centipede 2 either.
Yeah.
Because from what I've heard, there's no reason why the stories exist. It's just glorified
violence.
Yeah.
Whereas like I watched The Salem, which I regretted, but I did hear that it had a reason. I heard there was a deeper meaning.
So
the 180 days off.
Charlotte.
Yeah. I heard they had a deeper meaning, so I thought I'm going to watch it. Unfortunately, the meaning passed me by completely, and all it was exploitation. So
there is that whole is there a horror exploitation?
Well, I think it's like you said about Hostel and Saw it. Like there's one critic that called it Gorno.
Yeah.
And the way that my friends were describing it, I was like, he's right, because these guys were so excited about the violent scenes in it. I'm like, I don't watch Evil Dead and see someone get stabbed in the ankle and get excited.
Yeah.
I'm like,
the pencil. You were thinking about the pencil. Like, I always remember the scene. I was like, oh, how would that feel on my? Oh, no, that's too painful to even imagine. And that sort of thing. But it's how the build up to it is brilliant. That moment we just like closer and closer and closer and closer, and you don't know that's gonna happen. You expect it to be grabbed, right? Yeah. But not that. And I think and he's not glorifying it, and you can feel like it's that sort of is just entertainment, and you're not getting excited, and in that gory way. But the other thing is like we had this whole thing with torture porn. How did that come about, man? I mean, like it was all of a sudden everybody was saying that, and I was like, what?
Well, that's hostile thought.
Yeah, I think that might have come slightly out of the sort of the wave of J horror that came over in the late 90s with things like Audition and whatnot. And that was a bit more extreme. There was also the new French extremity stuff like Irreversible and Trouble Every Day and all those that had sort of upped the ante. And then I mean, I don't know. I think it might be something to do. Also, I mean, I suppose Saw was an Australian movie, and Australians always tend to be a little less inhibited with their stuff. Also, because James Wan, Lee Cornell were big exploitation fans, so they probably. Once you saw the original one's not that gory, of course, is it? But
I actually thought the first Saw was actually a very good film.
Yeah, I like that one. Yeah.
But I watched the second one, and I thought this is going downhill fast, and I can see where it's going. Yeah, and that was it. I didn't feel like watching it anymore.
I quite like. I think the director, when he writes the first one, like what's his name?
James Wan.
So he writes the first one. He thinks it really well through what's going to happen, and it succeeds. Excuse me, it's a success. The studio comes and goes, "Hey, crank out some more." Yeah, same movie. Come on, let's go.
Yeah.
Now he doesn't have the time to think about it and stuff, and that's where when you have to put out a movie every kind of year because to drive. I think that sort of it's like a band trying to make a album every year, whereas usually takes them 3 years, 4 years to get the right notes in place, and that's the same thing with movies. I think writing a script, you got to have the right notes in place, the right beats, as we say, the pacing, because otherwise, like. You won't like it. Like 2 doesn't, one was really cool. Like Cube's. Remember Cube?
Yeah.
Very clever.
That's what I'm hoping happens with this book. This one's taken me long enough to write. I'm hoping it'll be excellent, and then the second one will be terrible.
But I mean, like that's the thing. It's like your first ones, you put your whole heart and soul into it, and I think once it becomes successful, then it's sort of like if you don't pull back from it and pace it out, it becomes something else. And it's a lot like this whole reboot, the whole reboot thing that we go through. Like the only recent reboot I've liked is Clive Barker, right, with this Hellraiser.
Yeah,
I thought that was okay. It's a 6 in my. It's passable as a reboot. It's a 6 in my ratings, right, out of 10, or maybe 6.5. Have you seen it?
Seen it.
Yeah. So I'm a huge Clive Barker fan, and I was looking forward to Hellraiser. It didn't excite me.
Yeah.
Right. There was a lot of hype about it, but when I got to see it, it didn't excite me. I watched the first one, and I became a Clive Barker fan of all his books, all his movies.
Yeah.
Way back when the first one came out on VHS. But I mean, and it doesn't have the same excitement with this because I thought he came back and he was in charge. But I did see Smile recently at the theater with Mike, and a couple of ladies, and a couple of ladies were really scared. I had a bit of tense moments, but I enjoyed watching a horror movie at the cinema for the first time in years.
Yeah,
and I thought that was really cool. It was very smart. Have you seen Smile? Very smart movie.
I tried
original.
to see that 3 times and I missed it. I for some reason I kept getting thwarted from seeing that. So I think it's gone now, isn't it? Yeah. I'll catch up with it. It looks really good.
It's really well done. I think it's.
Was it a build-up or was it jump scares?
It was just a nice flow.
Nice build-up.
Yeah, it was really cool.
The ones that build up last better than the long. You watch one full of jump scares, you can't rewatch it.
Yeah.
I mean, I could rewatch the Omen 5 or 6 times. I'll be fine.
I heard Smile that I had a critic who hates jump scares said it does have jump scares, but he still enjoyed it. So, see how it goes. Anyway, let's speculate about movies we haven't seen.
Well, it's not original. It's like the whole idea behind it, who was in charge, like the characters. It went, it did as a modern horror, and I didn't feel like I'd been ripped off by watching it at the cinema. It was worth my $20. And you can't often say that about movies. It was worth it was worth the ticket price, and it was worth the ticket price. For me anyway.